What's up, degenerates? This is important nonsense. This is Locked In. I am your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mason on the Twitter. It's already gone off the rails. I put our first game up there. I obviously don't have my ducks in a row, but I know that you do. How are you doing tonight? How are you doing? How you living? With me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta, at Vishaal Gupta, at Vishaal_Gupta 95 on Twitter. Save the day here. I'm already flustered. I'm already fumbling. Let's win some money today. What do you say?
Let's do it. I mean, there's no better way to start the show than that because there's nowhere to go but up. But yeah, doing great. Looking forward to another fantastic weekend of nonstop football, and yeah, ready to get into it.
I think that's also a good sign of that we're going to make a turnaround this week, because what a weird sequence of a couple of weeks it's been. You got the Jets losing again. The Broncos are 2-0, or 2-2 over the last, month. I just don't even know what to make of some of the things anymore. But I think we've got some good reads here. We've got some games that I'm actually really excited to watch, first off. And you know what? We had a hell of a Thursday night game, so it can only be a sign of good things to come.
Yep.
I'm excited.
Awesome game.
Let's break into it. So, as you guys just saw, because I leaked our board here on the back, we're opening up with Thursday night, as we always do. What a game. Huge game. Tampa goes into Atlanta. Atlanta storms back to take this win in overtime, 36-30. Atlanta go ahead and covers as a home favorite. I'm not going to lie, I really didn't see that one coming. We put in the Discord this week. That was one of the games that I actually really did like. I was in on Tampa. I thought that's going to be a really good look. I like what they can do with matchups. And, I guess I didn't have as good of a read on it as I thought, because all of a sudden we had
1 second away. You had it for 59 minutes and 59 seconds, and just right at the very last second.
The very last second. And, that all came down to Kirko. Kirko bangs, baby. Kirko Cousins. 50-yard touchdown in OT to win it. Crazy. Atlanta covers -2.5 at home. Obviously, the over hit on this one, over 44. There's 66 total points. Kirko, 42 of 58. 509? 4 touchdowns and an interception. Do I have that right? I had to double check when I read that. I was like, there's no shot for him to break Matt Ryan's single game passing record on Matt Ryan night is kind of crazy. I don't think anybody could have predicted that Kirk was going to go ahead and have 67 dropbacks. And while he had a huge stat game, a huge game in the box score, only one big-time throw, 3 turnover-worthy plays. A lot of this production really goes to the receiving core out there. Now, Kirk made some really good throws, some tight window throws. He was definitely looking unafraid. He let some of those balls get away from him, too, for some really boneheaded throws. But, man, Drake London, huge game. 12 for 154 and a touchdown. He did take a blow across the middle. One of those balls that Kirk was kind of missing throughout the day. He left him a little hospital ball high over the middle, which, 20 years ago, we'd be lucky to have been seeing Drake walk away from that one. And, he ended up being okay and came back into the game. But I was worried he was going to get knocked out of that one into protocol. But no, came back, had a good game. Pretty much the entire receiving core had a solid outing. Darnell Mooney caught a crazy one up there. So, wow. Yeah. Just insane. And, I'm not going to lie. I thought Atlanta would try to attack Tampa on the ground, because that's kind of where they've been weak. Kalijah Kancey's still not back. Vita Vea has been dealing with a knee injury. And Tampa's secondary has been relatively strong throughout the first month of the season. They just went in there, picked them apart, really played a good game. Tampa on the other side, they ran the ball decently well, but it really didn't play into their favor that well. They only ran 51 plays compared to Atlanta's 81. Baker did play efficiently. He just didn't get quite the looks, and I came up short on a 22.5 completions after the guys pretty much hit that every single week. They really draw in a lot of easy completions for him, and that just wasn't there this week, and it was more or less because the run game got going. So, but either way, this game might have slammed me, but I had a lot of fun watching it. V, what did you make of this one?
Yeah, awesome game. Great Thursday night game last night. I think this is exactly kind of what Atlanta was hoping for when they brought Kirk Cousins in, right? I mean, not necessarily 500 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, but a competent quarterback who can lead this offense that has so many talented players. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that it was very much the quarterbacks who were holding this team back the last few years because they had a lot of great pieces. And we're seeing what Arthur Smith is doing in Pittsburgh right now. He is a competent offensive play caller. He knows what he's doing on that side of the ball. But no matter how good you are on that end, you have to have a quarterback who knows what they're doing, and they have that guy now in Kirk Cousins. I think this is a lot of the reason why a lot of people, including myself, liked Atlanta to come out of the NFC South and win that division, and they're in good position to do that now with this win. A great job by the passing game and the receivers. Would like to see them, use Bijan more. I'm not sure why he only had 12 carries in this game. It wasn't like it was a blowout at any point in the game. It was a relatively close game. So, I think they're still tweaking some things out, trying to find a better balance because, there's some games where the passing game hasn't been effective at all. And there's been some games where the running game hasn't been effective, but they can find a little bit more of a balance. This is going to be a very, very tough offensive stop going in the future for the rest of the season. And then on the Tampa side, I'm not entirely sure what happened there in the second half. I mean, they were rolling. First half, Baker had 3 touchdowns. The one to Sterling Shepard was incredible. It was a great rollout, great anticipation throw before the guy was even turning for the ball. So he played great in the first half. And I don't know, I think it just kind of stalled for them for whatever reason in the second half. But they're still playing way better than anybody thought they would be coming into the season. So this is a legit playoff team still down the road.
Yeah, the second half adjustments from Atlanta, particularly with Raheem Morris's system and what they were calling defensively. I wrote about it this week over at PFF that Atlanta is a team that likes to disguise their coverages, and a lot of times they'll rotate from that 2 high to the 1 high look. And there were a couple times that Baker took advantage of that, especially on that one little corner that I think it was Mike Evans caught. It looked so simple, so easy, just like they drew it up. And it was because he could anticipate what he was going to see in coverage. And you just didn't quite see as much of that in the second half. I don't know if it comes down to play calling. I don't know that I hated much of the play calling. I thought it was fine. They just didn't really execute on some of those plays that they were in the first half, and some looks just kind of got away from them. But when we talk about Atlanta, the running game is just a shock, if I'm honest, because, I highlighted a line this week that Tyler Algier, I thought he was going to get a lot more work. Bijan Robinson, hammy. He was kind of limited in practice this week, ended on a full practice to go into the game. So we knew he was going to go. And I anticipated his workload not being huge, but I didn't anticipate the entire running game just kind of going by the wayside. Like we said at the top, Kirk almost had 70 dropbacks. Like that doesn't happen in the NFL, and you win the game. Like, that's not usually how that works out. So it was definitely an interesting one. I think that this Falcons team is actually one of the hardest teams to peg down. Coming into the year, I thought they were going to pretty handedly walk through the NFC South. They've had some issues throughout the beginning of the season, some tough games, some close losses. But a lot of the times it feels like the outcomes of their games kind of hinge on either there's that margin of luck. I know that it's hard to quantify, but the turnover luck, the close play luck, the close call luck, they've really won and lost games in that little thin margin. So it makes it tough to really bank on them. I don't think they're terribly great against the spread. I think they were 1-3 coming into the game. So now they have another one. I think they're in first place now, right, with the win. So
yeah, they're 2-0 in their division, which is kind of the big thing. Even though, like you said, it hasn't been pretty, but you'll take this for what it's been the first 5 weeks, being 3-2, being first in the division. And I think for a lot of teams, the first few weeks of the season is really just kind of figuring your stuff out, and nobody's expecting you to be perfect in the first few weeks of the season. We've seen that across the league. We've seen that over the last few years. It's just with the reduction in preseason and training camp stuff, teams are not super ready to start out the season. So if you're right, it probably has been a lot of luck more than they would want to admit it. But I think that's okay because this team is clearly not firing on 100% cylinders right now. So if they can do that going throughout the rest of the season, they can find their stride and then pile up some wins. I think it's going to be very beneficial for them.
Yeah, get the defense foundation in there because I thought the defense was going to be better. It hasn't looked terribly great, but like we said earlier, like you said at the top, it's either the run game or the pass game. They've rarely ever been able to get both together through the first month. So if they're able to start hitting their stride, take these small wins, not that any win in the NFL is a small, but these small victories in terms of, hey, we threw the ball really well this week. Hey, we can try to work on getting the run game going next week, and hopefully we can hit on both of them. And if they can kind of put that together, they will be a tough team to stop. And, the South isn't quite as weak as I think we had anticipated.
That's the other point. I was going to say, you were expecting them to steamroll them. I probably was too. I don't think either of us saw Tampa Bay, New Orleans kind of being as competitive as they were going to be first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely going to be a tough battle. It's going to be one to watch for sure, though. I'm going to like seeing it all play out in the South this year.
Yep.
So the first game on our slate, though, we have some good ones. The first two are awesome. I almost want to save them to the end because we're going to talk about them forever.
Yeah.
But the first game on our schedule here is one I'm more excited about. I'm not going to lie. Minnesota's my favorite team to watch right now. I love watching them play. They make football look a lot of fun. So that's really all I can say right now. They're the only team that is still undefeated against the spread. They are a perfect 4-0. And Oddsmakers just surprisingly keep mispricing this team. This week we have the Jets coming into Minnesota playing host, and it's only a 2.5 point line. Now, I understand that we can't put the Jets' performance against Denver last week too high. Yes, they lost. Yes, it was a low-scoring game. Yes, not a lot went right. It was also terrible weather. It was absolutely atrocious. Even still, though, they have some ground to gain. They're pretty middling in pretty much all of their EPA ranks, and they're not really a great run blocking team. They only have 0.3 yards before contact per attempt. That's the worst in the NFL. If they can't run the ball, this is going to be a tough matchup for them because Brian Flores is going to tee up some of these blitz packages and some of these creative looks. He's not only just teeing up the most wild and intricate blitz packages, but he's also throwing out coverages that you just don't see at this level because sometimes the guys are just too smart and they can kind of sniff it out before it happens. But no, he's dropping guys that he's lining up 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. He's dropping them to a deep half safety. He's throwing weird variations of Tampa 2 out there. What he's doing with this defense, I think, is a masterclass. I really love watching it. I love going through their tape. I know I say that every week. Brian Flores, you want to come on the show? We can have you on here. But yeah, so either way, Minnesota's defense, they've looked really good. And I think that we're both in line here with what we're seeing from Minnesota. Obviously, close game last week with Green Bay, but 28 in the first half. They kind of just took their foot off the pedal. They're top 8 in EPA per play on offense. They're top 4 in EPA per play on defense. Also, they haven't really had a cupcake schedule. Their schedule outright
incredibly
wins.
Difficult. Incredibly difficult.
Outright wins versus San Francisco, Houston, and on the road at Green Bay. I don't know how we can continue. What else does Minnesota need to do for Oddsmakers to be here is a 3.5 point spread? 2.5 for me is just not. This is a no question. This was the first game I went to, and I was like, Minnesota only 2.5. All right, let's get on there. So, I'm liking it. I think that this is going to be a good one. I just can't wait to see it happen. Everything we're seeing offensively is good. What are you making of this game, V?
Yeah, I'm also on Minnesota minus 2.5 in this one. I think we can start with Minnesota's defense, which I think is not being talked about as much as their offense is being talked about right now. But their defense has been phenomenal. They're allowing the 4th fewest points per game right now. They're 2nd in the league in takeaways, 1st in sacks, and they're allowing the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game. Like you said, if the Jets can't run the ball and they have to rely entirely on this passing game that has been, average at best, it's going to be really, really difficult against this Flores defense. Rodgers was sacked 5 times last week. There was a lot of talk this week about, cadence issues and the offense just not being on the same page, potentially some issues with Saleh and Rodgers not getting along right now. This is a tough week to fix those issues, not just because they're playing a Flores defense, but because this is a London game, so you are traveling right now. There's not a lot of time in the week to practice and get prepared. So if you have these big issues to work on, this is a tough time to fix it. probably something that you're gonna have to wait till the bye week to fix. But not going to London, that's not the right time to do it. This offense has scored more than 24 points. They have not scored more than 24 points in a single game right now. They have 2 games this season where they scored 13 or fewer points. So it's just been not a consistent offense that you can count on week in, week out quite yet. They have not reached that point where they're, totally figuring it all out. And then Minnesota's offense, you already said it, they've been terrific. They're averaging the 4th most points per game right now. Darnold has 11 touchdowns, tied for most in the league with Baker Mayfield, and that's despite Baker playing 1 extra game. So just Baker has 11 in 5 games. Darnold has 11 in 4 games. So on fire right now. And then obviously they have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all these guys on offense who are clicking on all cylinders right now. I think there's an expectation that at some point in the season there's going to be some regression in this offense. Like, is Darnold going to be able to keep this up for a 17-game season? Probably not. But I think that regression is baked into this line. Like, if you were just taking it based on what you've seen the first month of the season, you're totally right. 2.5 would not be the appropriate line. This should be closer to 4, maybe even 4.5. The fact that it is 2.5, I think part of that is the London aspect, but I think part of it is that Oddsmakers are just trying to get ahead of that regression happening. And I don't know if this is probably the week that it's going to happen. I think the Jets defense has been good, but they're still allowing the 50th points per game. But 3 of the quarterbacks they faced, Will Levis, Jacoby Brissett, and Bo Nix. So I don't think you can really, take what they've done the past few weeks and say that's what's going to happen against the Vikings here, because it's just a completely different class of competition. A couple injuries for the Jets. Morgan Moses is still out. He got hurt on the Thursday night game. And then C.J. Mosley is doubtful. I think he missed last week as well. So a couple injuries to monitor.
Yep. C.J. Mosley's been dealing with one. Jamin Sherwood's been playing decently well for them in the center. But when you're missing your best player on defense,
right.
that's one of your best players on defense. It's tough to navigate. And, that's been a big issue for them, especially when you talk about how they've struggled versus the run. They're missing a ton of tackles right now on running downs. They have the most missed tackles in the league on running downs through 4 weeks. And when you get Aaron Jones out here, man, Aaron Jones is tied for 8th in missed tackles forced on runs. So that he's going to be able to press the edge. They're really going to, I think, put him into a good position this week. And we got to talk about the Sam Darnold revenge tour, baby. He's already taken down the Niners, and now he's setting his eyes on the Jets. And you know what? We talked about this. If they're going to come out and just play really inspired football behind Sam Darnold and play really well around him is kind of the big theme that I've been seeing.
Yep.
It's not just Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's on fire, but the receivers, they're making plays. The offensive line is looking good. They're running the hell out of the ball. And then, if I keep talking about Brian Flores' defense, we'll be here all day. So with this team, I think you are right. They're baking in that regression. And I'm going to keep taking it until they prove me that this regression is going to come. And I'm not necessarily convinced that that's this week either. So I like seeing it. I can't wait to see this game personally. But as anybody that's watched this show knows, we'll all catch it after because I'm not up at.
We'll catch the second half, maybe the fourth quarter. We'll figure
this
it out.
is in mine and Vishaal's time. 7:30 a.m. You guys.
6:30 for me.
We'll see. Yeah, we will see you guys after the game. But anyway, so that is the London matchup. The next game on the list is another good one, and another one that we took a beating on last week, and we spent a lot of time talking about it. But they're back. The Baltimore Ravens are back, and it's because they figured out how to run the ball. They figured out that Derrick Henry is still very, very good at football. So we have the Baltimore Ravens heading into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Baltimore -2.5 on the road here. I'm liking them at -2.5. V, we'll break into what you're thinking on this game here too. I'm thinking that we're in a similar boat here, but it's tough to fade them right now. They didn't look terribly, terribly great. We talked about that a little bit last week, but absolutely came out and stomped Buffalo in primetime. And now they're 2-0 against the spread since they discovered, like I said, that Derrick Henry is still very good at football. He leads the NFL in rushing yards and touchdowns, 6 yards per carry. The man is an absolute monster. And really the big thing is that we're not putting everything on Lamar's shoulders to win. For the first few weeks, it felt like it was Lamar or nothing. And it wasn't necessarily because Derrick Henry couldn't play ball. It was just we talked about this. He's a guy who's got to get in a rhythm. You got to give him some carries. You got to let him get his feet under him and let him bowl some people over. And then you're really going to unlock a huge day from him. And that's just what they missed at the beginning of the year. What else that's opened up for them with Lamar is the play action passing game. They're the second highest play action percentage team through 4 weeks, top 8 grade passing grade for Lamar in play action. So now they're starting to get under center a little bit, turning his back, faking the handoff, doing some stuff that Lamar's not necessarily comfortable with, but he's been making it look fairly good. So that's an encouraging statement from him. And when you look at just over the last 2 games, Baltimore, 3rd in EPA per rush. This team needs to run the damn ball. And I know that I have a PFF in my name, and that might sound really goofy for me to say since the company that I work for has long time been against that. Or I shouldn't say against that, but has, kind of
against running backs, right?
Exactly. So, but run the damn ball because they're looking good doing it. And when you come up against Cincinnati is atrocious on defense right now. They need to figure some things out because it's looking pretty bad. And particularly on the rushing side, bottom 4 in EPA per rush allowed, bottom half of the league in yards per carry allowed. And a lot of it also comes, they're just not very good pass rushing teams. So teams can really just do whatever they want against them. Run the ball, throw the ball. You're really not going to feel a lot of heat. Lowest pass rush win rate in the NFL, 27.5%. That's alarming. That's very alarming because even just if you were to take out like cleanup pressures and things like that, pressures where a guy doesn't necessarily like win, they're looking at a very, very low pressure rate. And that's alarming. That's very scary. And when we literally saw this a couple weeks ago, Jaden Daniels was literally busting them up. They have trouble with mobile passers. Lamar getting help in this run game and being mobile, I think that, man, Joe Burrow and company are really going to have to put pedal to the metal or this one could get out of hand quickly. Since he beat Carolina by 10, and I took a L on that one too because I liked Carolina, but it's more of I just don't know that this Cincinnati team is really built for this right now. They did win by 10, but it did not feel like they won that comfortably. So what are you seeing with this one, V? I have a feeling that you're kind of leaning in a similar light.
Yep. Also liking Baltimore -2.5 here. I think this opened up at +3 for Cincinnati, and I was kind of looking at Cincinnati at that spot at +3, but overall felt like there was better options. But now that it's dropped to below the field goal, I think Baltimore is definitely the pick here. We'll start with Baltimore's offense. You already talked about it. Rushing game has been on fire. They have over 270 rushing yards in each of their last 2 games. That is unbelievable. There are some teams who are not going to hit that mark once this year. So fantastic job by Baltimore's offense there. You also mentioned a Bengals rushing defense, not very good. They're allowing the 8th most rushing yards per game. So if you can't stop them, Baltimore on the ground, you have no chance of even really coming close to winning this game. Other areas of concern for Cincinnati's defense, they're allowing the 5th most points per game, and they're tied for the fewest sacks in the league so far with just 5 on the year. They are getting Myles Murphy back this week, who's been out for the first month of the season. So we'll see if he can help out. He was their first-round pick from a couple years back, but I don't think one guy who hasn't done a whole lot so far in his career is going to make that much of an impact for this pass rush. Cincinnati's offense has been pretty good. We kind of thought maybe they'd be doing the normal Cincinnati thing where they come off to a very slow start offensively based on what we saw in week 1. But they've been really good the last 3 weeks. They've been doing what they need to do. They're tied for 9th in points scored. They have a top 10 passing offense. The Burrow to Jamar Chase connection is alive and well. There's no issues there. They continue to roll. I think the big issue and big key, though, for their offense is going to be what can their offensive line do against this Baltimore pass rush. Baltimore is tied for 5th in sacks so far in the league. Kyle Van Noy and Ode, how do you say his name?
Odafe Oweh
are absolute monsters right now on the edges. They're getting to every quarterback, whoever they play. Cincinnati placed Trent Brown on injured reserve last week before their last game. So, and they're having Amarius Mims, who was their first round pick, starting this week for the second straight week. That's a tough matchup for a rookie against this defensive line. So that's my big concern for Cincinnati's offense. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Burrow clean in this one. Since Baltimore's defensive line has just been too good.
Yeah, and Mims, first round pick, you really hope that he'd hit the ground running a little bit better, but he has had some troubles, a little bit iffy in run blocking, a little bit iffy in pass blocking. So we want to see a little bit more from him. You would think that, like, hey, you lost your right tackle, but your first round pick from this year is a tackle, is a right tackle. So you would hope that that would be, you hitting the ground running and having a good transition period, but it just hasn't really equated to that so much. They definitely are missing Brown right now. And then Orlando Brown on the other side, he's been playing relatively well. That's a huge matchup with the Odafe Oweh. I can't wait to watch them duke it out because it's going to look freaking good because I can't wait to see it. And you're right. That defense, the secondary has been a little spotty at times for sure. But the pass rush has not been spotty. They have been damn good. And that's something that they're going to need to tap into. They're going to need to turn their pressure into success on the back end of coverage. So they can definitely get there. We've talked about their defenses before. They're a well-coached team. I know, new coaching on the defensive side of the ball, but they have a lot of track record of figuring things out. And
I mean, you just shut down Josh Allen, Dak Prescott back-to-back weeks, so there's got to be something there, right?
There's got to be something there that, hey, they might be figuring it out. And, I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but it's really, really tough when you go out there and whole-handedly hand the ass to another team that's up there in the top 3 in pretty much everybody's power rankings right now in the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. So I can't wait to watch this one. This is going to be a great AFC North matchup for sure. The next game on our list, I really just picked this one out because I want to talk about Jaden Daniels. I want to take a little victory lap on Jaden Daniels. The Cleveland Browns are heading into 3-1. The 3-1 Commanders, and they're on an absolute tear. The offense is playing so well. 38 plus points per game last 2 games. 33.7 points per game over the last 3. That's the best in the NFL. And Jaden Daniels is just getting his rhythm now, man. And we've talked about the Cliff Kingsbury system, but hey, it's a fit for Jaden Daniels right now. He's getting his rhythm. He's getting his completions. He's doing everything that's asked for him. Top adjusted completion percentage in the NFL, 90 over the last 2 games, 90.6% adjusted completion percentage. That's insane. That's literally nuts. Top passing grade in the NFL, top 8 in pass yards per attempt. So he is playing well and feeling well. The Cleveland defense, also not quite as strong as they've been in past seasons. They're kind of middling around the pretty much every defensive metric. They're right there around the middle. Points per game allowed, EPA per play allowed, things like that. And the big alarm for me for this defense, no Myles Garrett. Well, not necessarily no Myles Garrett, but he's dealing with an Achilles. And that scares me. I feel like every time we see somebody dealing with an Achilles injury, it very quickly turns into, yeah, he tore it. Yeah, it ruptured. Yeah, this, yeah, that. And he's been in a lot of pain. You can see it on the field. He's collapsed a couple times in a lot of pain. And that's a tough look when he's 32% of the team's total pressure. Excuse me. One player, 32%. So that is absolutely nuts. Reigning defensive player of the year. You want him in there feeling good and playing good. And I feel like if he were to go down, or if he's not to have a stellar game, or if he's feeling some pain, like this defense just takes a huge, huge hit that it might not be able to overcome like it could in the past. Like, they were elite all over the place last year. That's just not necessarily the case this year.
Yeah.
And when you look at how they've had troubles with blocking and protecting Deshaun Watson and really getting much going, I know that, Nick Chubb opened up his practice window. I don't know if that's going to be the thing that turns this entire team around. Now, he's not playing this week, obviously, but he should be, getting there and being back very soon. But I think that this team has a lot more to figure out than just the running game right now. But on the other side, we have Washington's defense. they've been highly suspect. While they've been really good offensively, they have been highly suspect defensively. Bottom third in points per game allowed, yards allowed. I know they just had a decent defensive performance last week, but this is just still pretty alarming with some of the stuff that we've seen. League's worst EPA per play allowed. And that's due mainly because they can't stop the run. They're pretty bad stopping the run. And I'm just not sure that Cleveland has the horses to take advantage of that in the backfield right now. Jerome Ford's been fine. They're just not really that focused on it or really doing enough with it to make a difference. And when you can't pass block like they can't right now, and they're leaving Deshaun Watson hanging out to dry, and he's getting pretty much plastered. But he played okay last week. He didn't really make those backbreaking mistakes, and it still just wasn't enough for them to win. So I'm frankly on the over here at 43.5, and it's not necessarily because I think Cleveland is going to do a whole lot to help this one out. I think they might, get 10, 13 on that. But I really do think that Washington can go ahead and dust this one off. 3 for the spread, I think, is also a pretty good spot. It's not my favorite line of the week, as I'm a little bit worried about their defensive struggles, but I really do like the over here. I think that that's a pretty nice spot to get in on. V, are you seeing anything else in this game or anything that you want to note in this matchup?
Yeah, this one's a little tricky. I think the over might be a little tough in this game just because I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think the big thing for me is I really don't trust Cleveland's offense right now. They have yet to score 20 points in a single game this year. That's very, very difficult to do. I think even the Patriots have scored 20 points in a game this year. Like, I don't know. There's not enough words and adjectives to continuously describe how bad this Cleveland offense has been. They had some moments last week, and they honestly should have probably won that game. There was a terrible holding call on that Amari Cooper touchdown. But even if that touchdown goes through, they still would have only scored 2 offensive touchdowns against a Raiders defense without Max Crosby. So it's like, if you can't do anything against the Raiders defense, I don't care how bad Washington's numbers look right now. They at least have some dudes. They looked good last week. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's Cleveland offense is really just unplayable right now. So if you want to hit the over in this one, I think you're going to need Washington to really carry like the bulk of the load. And I think they've shown they're capable of doing that the last couple of weeks. But again, they have also gone up against defenses that are not very good in Arizona and Cincinnati. And while Cleveland has not been as good as they have been in past years, still a formidable defense. And it'll be interesting to see what Jaden can do against this defense. So I think this over is a little too high for me just because I just can't trust Cleveland's offense whatsoever right now.
And it makes sense. It makes sense. I think they're going to get just enough. I think they're going to get just enough. If this were a point higher, if this were a half point higher, or a full point higher, I'd definitely be more hesitant. And I feel you. 43 does feel a little bit high for this one.
It shouldn't. On paper,
right.
Like this should be a relatively easy over, given like the talent you have on both sides of the ball. But it's just so bad in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's been a really tough look for the Dogs. They have a lot to figure out, and hopefully they can get healthy on the offensive line, and that'll help them. But that's also not this week. So
you know what else would have helped them? Just bringing back Joe Flacco. It was right there. He was in the building. Bring him back. There's no reason for any of this. This is their own fault. I don't even feel bad for them.
Do you think that any of the decision makers up there are like watching Baker do what he does on, in the first half of a primetime game and being like, that was our guy? They literally let that dude just go. And then he floated around the league. And I know that maybe Baker's not like the epitome of like franchise quarterback out there, but he's a gamer, man. He's a gamer, and he's built for a team like Cleveland, a team that's gritty, that can be gritty. And they're just so far removed from that now. And, like you said, this team looked way better with Joe Flacco under center than it has at all with Deshaun Watson under center. And I think that that's saying a lot. Well, I mean, the Colts are kind of looking like that too. And we're actually going to break into that game here next, which is a nice little seamless rotation into our next game here. Nice little transition. We have the next game on the slate here is the Colts heading into Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Jags -3 in this one. 46 is the game total here. I know we're both liking the game total. V, what are you seeing in this one that has you leaning a certain way on that?
Yeah, I'm liking the under in this game at 46 points. Let's start with Jacksonville's offense because unfortunately we have to. just as bad as Cleveland's offense has been, Jacksonville's offense has been equally terrible. They are tied for the third fewest points in the league so far. They've only hit 20 points in one game this year. That was last week against Houston. And honestly, that was because they were gifted 7 points at the very start of the game because they recovered a muff punt that set them up at like inside the 5-yard line. So if you take out that free 7 points, they only scored 13 points the rest of the game. Just a terrible offensive showing so far. They're bottom 10 in passing yards. It feels like a mess. I'm not 100% sure where the issues are. I don't know, the offensive system well enough. Obviously, Trevor is missing throws, but it also feels like he's not getting a ton of help from the rest of the team and his coaching staff. Indy's defense is bottom 10 in passing and rushing yards allowed, so this feels like a good spot for Jacksonville's offense to kind of explode and finally take off. But I just don't know if I can trust them, and I don't feel comfortable in them to be able to take advantage of this matchup. For Indy, they have a lot of injuries right now on their offensive side of the ball. Jonathan Taylor's already been ruled out for this one. Center Ryan Kelly has been ruled out. Their tackle, Braden Smith, is questionable to play in this game. He has had a very interesting week. He went from a DNP on Wednesday to a full participant on Thursday to once again being a DNP on Friday. I don't know if I've ever seen that kind of roller coaster of an injury report for a player like that, but I have no idea if he's going to play or not. But obviously, him being out would be a major loss. And obviously, the big one, Anthony Richardson, is questionable to play in this game. He was listed as limited today in practice, but all reports out of Indy were that Flacco took all of the reps for the quarterback position in practice today. So it looks like it's going to be Flacco under center. Honestly, Flacco was, once again, very solid last week. 16 for 26, 168 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. I don't believe he turned the ball over once. So, I think he's going to be fine. I think that passing game is going to be fine for Indy. I'm just not totally sure that he's going to be able to carry the load for both sides in this one, both Indy and Jacksonville, to hit this over. Trey Sermon coming in at running back. He's only had 9 carries so far, so not a big sample size, but on those 9 carries, he's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry. So, if they're not going to be able to run the ball and you're going to have to just entirely rely on the passing game, I think they can do fine, and I think they can probably even win this game. But to hit over 46, given what we're seeing out of Jacksonville right now, just feels like too much.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. And when we talk about, just to start with Jacksonville, I don't know that I've ever seen, well, you do see it, but I've never seen somebody so callously kind of toss his entire roster under the bus after a loss where we've kind of talked about, like, not anything's really going right for them in Jacksonville. It's not just one side. When Trevor is getting a look, when guys are helping him out, he's missing the throws. This is something that colleague of mine, Dalton Wasserman over at PFF, was talking about, is that, Doug did come in and fix Trevor's footwork, and Trevor looked a lot better last year, and it's kind of all reverted this year where they're not quite looking too good. He's letting balls sail, and that's only when they're really getting good looks, and a lot of the times they're not getting great looks. It doesn't feel like the play calling is really helping him out, and if you're going to go out there and kind of throw your roster under the bus after a tough start to the year, and obviously he's feeling the heat under his, coaching of, under management and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that they probably had conversations or whatever. But when you go and throw your team under the bus like that, there's 0% opportunity, or there's 0% chance that you don't lose the locker room, especially if you come out and lose at home as a 3-point favorite against a division foe. Yeah. If this is a loss and this is not a great look for them against a team that does not have JT, this is going to be bad.
Yeah, and he's got to be at the top of first coach fired for Doug Peterson right now. I haven't looked at the odds, but I'd be surprised if he's not at the top.
I would be highly surprised as well. If this is a bad loss, I have a hard time seeing him being the head coach of this team by this time next week. It's just not a good look. And like you said, no JT for this team. Looking like probably not going to be Anthony Richardson. And I mean, maybe that's a good thing for them right now, because
I was going to say, I would feel even more comfortable with the under in this one if it was Richardson under center. As weird as that sounds.
Good at his top, and he looks really bad at his bottom.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to tell which one of those players you're going to get on a weekly basis, because we just don't have a big sample. We just do not have a big sample. And it's tough to really see this team succeeding without Jonathan Taylor this week. So it's going to be a tough one to see. Let's see here. I'm pretty sure this is Jason. I'm pretty sure this is our own Jason Draven. If not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like fairly certain. He's liking Sermon 60 plus is plus 145. That Jags D is bad. 100% agree. I think that that's a pretty decent look right there, especially when you're not going to have JT in the lineup. And I mean, even though we have the injuries on the O-line, that is still this Indy team's bread and butter. This is their strength, getting there on the offensive line and asserting their dominance. When they don't do that, the team just does not look great offensively. If he gets 20 plus carries and Taylor's gotten 20 plus the past 3 games, I feel like it could happen. I definitely agree. I think that that's probably a decent read. Not a lot going for this Jags team. Start 2. We got another question here from Carter. What's up, Carter? How you doing? Start 2, Coleman, Hunt, JSN, and Addison. So I will say, just forewarning, Carter, we are the smooth brain. Well, I'm the smooth brain. V is very smart, but we're the betting guys, so you'll have to take that with a grain of salt. If you do want more of the fantasy guys, hit up our Discord and hit up guys like Jason in there, importantnonsense.com. That's how you become a member. But let's see what we're looking at. Coleman, so Keon, I think, right? Yeah. Hunt, JSN, and Addison. So we did talk a little bit about the Minnesota game earlier. I think Addison is going to be a big piece of this offense kind of moving forward. He had a pretty good game last week. Now, he does have a tough matchup with DJ Reed. DJ Reed's actually been playing great to start the year. So the secondary is not necessarily the problem with the Jets right now. It's kind of other places. But, you know, when you're going to have Sauce probably following Jay Jetta, I think Addison's going to get DJ Reed, and that might still be a tough matchup. But like I said, and like we talked about before, I think this Minnesota team is just looking too damn good to fade right now. I'm trying to play as many Vikings as I can. And then, you know, I think we're probably going to get into Seattle a little bit later. So I would also probably lead JSN. It's tough because with, you know, Keon Coleman, I like it. And like you said, Shakur out, but I don't necessarily know that I want to pick on 2 really, really talented corners in Houston right now. I know that they haven't necessarily played lights out, but they're not necessarily the guys you want to make a living picking on. It could end up being a really long day for you. So I think I'm leaning JSN and Addison, but what are you thinking, B?
Yeah, I'm going to also go with Addison, but I'm probably going to go Kareem Hunt with the second guy. I think with Keon Coleman, even with Shakir out, we talked about it last week, Buffalo really likes to spread the ball around. They're not really focused on any one receiver. So you still have guys like, you know, Dawson Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel, and then James Cook is a pretty good receiving back. So I think they're still going to want to spread the ball around. So tough to rely on Coleman there. And then with the JSN, I think we'll get into it in a bit because I do have a pick on that game. I just don't feel like that game script is going to warrant necessarily passing the ball too much for long. I mean, they're going to have to. And with Jason still being third in targets in there behind Lockett and Metcalf, I just don't feel like he's going to get enough opportunity in this game to warrant starting. So I'll take Addison and Kareem Hunt, who should get more carries this week, especially if Carson Steele is still in the doghouse for fumbling the ball a couple times the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's a tough look for him. I really like his story, but he did get kind of the hype train behind him, and it really didn't set him up for success there. But yep, definitely right there with you. I like the picks too. Carter, appreciate the sub. Come back anytime. Hit us up, or even, you know, stick around. We got some betting content we're going through, and, you know, we might win some money there. And yeah, we just broke down one of the uglier games of the slate, but we tend to make quite a bit of money off some of these ugly games more than the nicer games. So the next game on the list here is one that you're liking, V. We have Carolina heading into Chicago to take on a Bears team that is favored 3.5 points. Now, it's a weird spot because, man, I'm looking for opportunities to really like Carolina.
Yeah.
Because they look half decent now with Andy Dalton under center. They look like a real football team. Chicago, as bad as they've been in a lot of facets, -3.5, and they're winning at home. They're doing well at home. So they have a home game here. Game total on this one, 41 points. V, what are you targeting in this one?
Yeah, I am once again liking the over in this game. I took it last week. I'm going to take it again this week, roughly the same number as 40.5 last week, 41 this week. I think it's going to be a very similar type game as what they did with the Rams last week. As much as people like to talk down on Chicago and their offense, and, obviously it has not been pretty through the first month of the season, they have been improving every single week. They scored 0 touchdowns in week 1 offensively, 1 in week 2, 2 in week 3, 3 last week. By the end of the season, they're going to be scoring 15 touchdowns on offense every week. It's going to be awesome to watch, but they don't need to go that crazy this week. They're only going to need like 2 or 3 or 4 in this one to hit the over. Their running game is finally starting to show up. They rushed for 131 total yards last week. DeAndre Swift finally looked like he knew how to play running back for the first time this season. Going up against a Carolina defense that is allowing the 4th most rushing yards per game. They're also allowing the most points per game in the NFL at 32 points, and they're tied for the fewest sacks in the league with 5. They lost Shaq Thompson last week to an Achilles injury, and Joey Jewell has been ruled out in this game, so they're out there starting 2 linebackers, and then obviously they lost Derek Brown in week 1, who was obviously their best defensive player on that unit. So very banged up defensive unit that wasn't very good coming into the year anyways. So I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Chicago to score in this one. And then on the flip side, Carolina's offense has been significantly better the last 2 weeks with Andy Dalton under center. They've scored 36 and 24 points in their last 2 games. Dalton has 5 touchdowns in that span. They've rushed for over 130 yards in each of their last 2 games. Chicago is top 10 in passing defense, but they are allowing 121 rushing yards per game. They've allowed over 140 rushing yards twice this season, so I think this could be a nice Chuba Hubbard game. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry right now. He should have plenty of room, I think, to make some noise in this one and put up some points for Carolina, even if it's like just in the low 20s for them. I think Chicago can do the rest and hit this over. I think it's a couple points too low.
Yeah, definitely understandable. I think this one probably lines up more with one of the totals we were looking at just a minute ago at like the 43.5 kind of mark. 41 seems fairly low, especially when, granted, Carolina's defense has just not really looked super hot. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. You'll have to forgive me because I didn't pull out their pressure rates or anything like that. But they haven't really generated a ton of pressure, it's felt like. And on the back end, they've struggled. It seems like every time you turn over to them, they have a DB out there, lobbying for a call or, after he just got gashed open. And that happened a couple times to JC Horn. And, maybe some of the calls could go better their way, but
you can also not allow Jamar Chase to fish the ball 20 yards down the field and then run 50 yards past you for no reason. Like
exactly.
They're just not a capable unit right now.
Yeah. So it doesn't look great for them. And that's going to be one of their big detriments. And it's like I said, when we were talking about the Cincinnati game, they look better offensively, Carolina being that they can put together. They look like a real football team. And even though they lost by 10 at home, it did not feel like they lost by 10 at home. It felt like they couldn't figure anything out on defense, and their offense is keeping them in things. So I like what you're laying down here at 41. I think is a very reasonable line because we're gonna get into some game totals here in a second that are outrageous. So yeah, I completely agree. I like where your head's at on this one. Another good read by you. The next game we have on the list.
Speaking of ugly games, Jesus.
Ugly game, and we are going to live in the chaos. And a big thank you to Jason for breaking down his start sits. I don't know if you saw those, Carter, but Jason, awesome writer over here, or awesome, head of pretty much everything we do here. So definitely liking his read there. The next game we have on this list, though, is going to be an ugly one. You guys strap in because it's going to get ugly. It's going to be bad. We have Miami heading into New England to take on the Patriots. And just to show you guys how goofy this game is, go shop around. Because both teams are laying points depending on where you go for this. And it just doesn't make any sense. So when we see this, I don't know. There's just no clean way to put it. I do not have faith in either of these teams figuring it out anytime soon. They've looked poor defensively. They've looked poor offensively. It's just not been pretty. There's going to be a lot of boneheaded plays, a lot of head scratching plays, and you're not going to see this one a whole lot on Red Zone this weekend. They combined for just 24.3 points per game, V. More, like 3/4 of the league has that by themselves, and that's these two teams combined. 8.3 points per game last three since Tua's injury. Miami can't even find 13 points. Like it's that bad. They have 3 total points on the road. 3. And this is a team that is laying points in some spots. I just don't understand it. I get that they have good weapons, and if they can figure out some way to get these weapons the ball, they could be better, but there's such a net negative at quarterback right now. And it's not an offense to Tyler Huntley. He's doing all that he can right now. He's just limited in both experience and time getting acclimated to this system that it's like, yeah, of course he's going to struggle. You know, I had a bet last week where I was like, hey, man, they need to get the ball to these playmakers, and they got to do it any way they can. I bet you they start running the ball to wide receivers, and I took a line on Jalen Waddle getting a carry for half yard. I just needed a half yard from Jalen Waddle. He'd had the most rushing attempts. Granted, one was like a backwards screen or whatever, but he'd had the most rushing attempts through 3 games. He had 2. They gave Tyreek Hill 3 in the game and didn't give Waddle even 1. So I had a good read there, picked the wrong player, but it did not necessarily make a difference because they looked pretty bad in a lot of facets of the game. Miami has scored 20 points in their last home game, but granted, like we talked about, they're not doing stellar offensively either. A lot of their issues come from a very, very porous offensive line. It does not look good for them. At this point, now, they're not going to come out and say it, but at this point, it feels like they're terrified to put Drake May out there and just get him plastered. And part of me is proud of them for doing that because we talk all the time about how you can ruin a quarterback by literally getting his ass kicked through his first year or early on in his career where they lose all confidence. They start, quote unquote, seeing ghosts, and they're afraid to do that with Drake May. But they're at a point that even without Drake May, they don't have a lot of answers. So I'm not sure what to make of this one. 36.5 also isn't the only game this low in the game total this week. 36.5. You guys know me. I'm unafraid of taking drastically low unders on this game. I think you're looking at 24 points combined, maybe. So
yeah, that's pushing it.
Yeah, and that might be pushing it. So I'm right there with you. Another update from Jason here. Stevenson officially will not be starting in week 5. Tyreek Stevenson, is that who we're talking about in Chicago?
Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, Ramondre Stevenson. Okay.
Yeah, because of his fumbling, I think he's fumbled in every game this year. So there was talk earlier this week about Antonio Gibson maybe starting. I think it was officially announced like 5 minutes ago. That,
Interesting.
will be starting.
Interesting. It definitely has nothing to do with the fact that Ramondre Stevenson also had like 98% of his yardage after contact or something outrageous like we talked about previously. I haven't looked at the number recently, but through the first 2 weeks, it was absolutely insane. Led the league by a huge margin. And I think it just continues to lead back to the fact that this offensive line does not have anything going for it. And they need to figure some stuff out quick because all 5 guys right now look not great. They look pretty bad.
And they're hurt. David Andrews, their center, out for the year.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a tough look because he's the leader of that unit. So, you'd really like for him to be able to be out there, and it's just not going to happen. So, tough look for them. But yeah, this one's going to be ugly. Don't worry, you can place your ticket and then just shut it off. You're not going to see this one on Red Zone anyway. Nope. The next game we have on the list, though, is the first game of the later slate that we're looking at here. The Giants heading into Seattle, and you know what's so funny, B, is I know we've talked about opportunities that we might be willing to take the Giants. And I'm going to be honest, they're slowly starting to dwindle, and this definitely ain't one of them. So they're heading into Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Seattle minus 6.5 at home here. Game total 42.5 points. V, You're obviously leading on the side of Seattle here at
Yep.
6.5, right underneath the full 7. What are you seeing in this one?
Yeah, let's start with the Giants. They are very, very banged up offensively. Malik Neighbors has been ruled out for this game with a concussion. Just some numbers for everyone, just so that we're all clear how important Neighbors has been to this offense. He is accounting for over 35% of that team's target share right now, and over 44% of their total passing yardage through the first month of the season. That 44% is double the next closest receiver at Wan'Dale Robinson. So it is just unbelievable how much of a focal point a rookie is for this offense. Now he's going to be out, just a massive blow for their passing attack. Devin Singletary is also listed as doubtful for this game. The Giants already were averaging the third fewest rushing yards per game in the league so far. Now you take out their lead back, and they're putting in, I think, Tyrone Tracy, who has very, very limited experience in the NFL. So I just have no idea what they're going to be able to do offensively in this game. And then we'll flip to Seattle's offense. I thought they were terrific on Monday night. Definitely not the reason why they lost that game. I think their offense played as well as you could ask for them. They are first in passing yards per game so far this year, and they are averaging over 130 rushing yards in 2 of the games that Kenneth Walker has started. He played week 1 and he played last week. Kenneth Walker looked fantastic. 3 touchdowns on Monday. So I think this offense is going to have no problem whatsoever scoring the ball in this game and getting a nice, easy blowout win. Couple injury notes for the Seahawks. Byron Murphy has been ruled out, but they are expected to get Uchenna Nwosu back to make his season debut this week. And then Boye Mafe is also expected to be back after missing Monday night. So overall, I think this is an easy blowout win. You can probably even pencil in the under in this game because I don't know what the Giants are going to do offensively.
Yeah, and we talked about it. I'm pretty sure we talked about it last week, but Seattle their defense is definitely one of their strongest suits. And when you're missing as many people as they were last week, there's going to be some regression. Yeah. So I think that that's fair to say. And then you just look at the other side of the ball. When we talk about what they've done offensively, K9's been great. Awesome. I'm pretty sure that he was the highest graded back in the league last week because he absolutely looked phenomenal on every single touch. And Malik Neighbors, man, is a problem.
It's crazy.
He is so damn good at football. It's so much fun to watch him play. He makes play. I think it was Garrett Wilson that had to address somebody on social media that was like a Giants fan or a Giants commentator or something like that.
He was upset because he dropped a couple balls or something, right? It was so dumb.
And he just told him to shut up. And it's like, that's all you have to say. Yeah. Because you might see those 2 drops, but brother, he has the entire offense's production on his back. The offense runs through him. And it's something that we've talked about previous in the year and in weeks past. And like, what is the balance, especially from a fantasy standpoint? Like, what's the type of receiver you really want to target on your team? Is it a guy that's going to be on a bad offense but going to get all the touches? Or is it going to be a guy who has a lot of people around him, who gets coverages open because there's too many people to cover and things like that? Malik, I'm usually the guy that leans the other way, but Malik Neighbors has readjusted my brain chemistry in that thinking because he is legitimately a bona fide WR1 in this league. And I cannot wait until they get some help around him. We talk about JD or DJ, Dan Jones, JD, Dan Jones and, like he hasn't been terrible, but he's also not really the type of quarterback that is pushing this team to the next level. If they can get a more talented passer in there, maybe some more targets, they're not awful on the offensive line. They let some plays get away from them, but Andrew Thomas is pretty damn good. And, they have some people on the defensive line that if they can pick that up pass rushing, they can be good. But they have so many things to figure out. This is not going to be one of those games that they have a good time with. I think getting it under the 6.5 is a huge value. If you can only get it at 7, if like you wait until Sunday and it's moved to 7, which I think that it will start moving towards 7.
It has in some places already.
Yeah. So when you do see it start moving towards 7, like it might be too late, but I think this is going to be a really good one to jump on, at 6.5. So I'm right there with you.
Yep.
Last game on the slate. I will admit, This is one I liked as a knee-jerk reaction because the Rams are a team I'm following around this year to pick on. And as much as I've liked Green Bay, there's some things that are hesitant for me in this one, which is why I've kind of like fluctuated on exactly which way I lean. I do like your lean on this one though, which we'll get into, but just some notes that I have written down here. I was liking Green Bay on the road -3. I will like it more if it can move to maybe like 2.5, and I
Oh
can
yeah,
feel a little bit more comfortable with that. 3's a little too high after I checked out the injury report and saw how that was coming along through the week. Wide receiver injuries. I don't think Dobbs is slated to go in this one.
yeah. Him and Christian Watson are doubtful right now.
Right. And Christian Watson had that ankle injury, which continues to kind of be the MO of his career. And I know that Green Bay just dropped this game last week against Minnesota, but they came to life late.
Yeah.
And, they kind of caught the Vikings by surprise and made the game closer in the end, while, like we talked about earlier with Minnesota, it was 28-7 in the end of the first half. So they pretty wholehandedly handed them their ass in that one. Jordan Love is obviously still dealing with the knee. I was trying to remember, is it his left knee? I was trying to think from the view. I'll
Don't
have
know
to
off
look.
the top of my
I'll
head
have
which
to.
one it was.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up, because when you look, he does look a little skittish planting in his drop. So when he goes up, he steps up and he plants into that foot to deliver the ball. And it doesn't look like he's fully confident right there. And he's letting some balls sail. And just that inaccuracy has led to some picks that are just like, did you throw it right to him down the field? Like, that's a little bit of a catch-22 there. Or not a catch-22, but a little bit of a worry, an alert. Yeah. Frankly, I don't think you're going to see that same issue against the Rams, though, because the Rams have been atrocious in the secondary. They have not looked good. But like we talked about with Minnesota throws out some crazy coverages. They threw out some weird stuff last week that I think would give even the most seasoned passers some moments of pause. So, I think it's a huge difference in level of competition that they're going to see this week, which is why we see a -3 for them on the road. But the receiver injuries are just a little bit iffy for me. I mean, I like the receiving core is already not super strong. So like to take two
I
guys
think
out of
it's
it is,
a little better than a lot of us were expecting going into even last year when they were all so young.
yeah.
I think a lot of these guys have showed up, and I think there's top guys are still there. Jaden Reed,
Jaden
Dontavian Wick.
Reed, you got
Those are
Dontavian
really their
Wicks.
top two
Right.
guys. So even with Dobbs and Watson out,
Well,
probably not overly
it's
concerned.
so funny because Christian Watson is the guy who keeps taking snaps away from Dontavian Wicks, and Wicks looks way better every time he's out on the field. Like there's a lot of balls like where he's like sometimes just a couple of like an inch or two away from making some of these crazy plays that really give him huge days. Like when we talked about in the preseason, like they came out, ran 3 snaps in the preseason. This man had like a 70-yard touchdown on one reception. So he really is a big play waiting to happen, and they really do a lot of good stuff. So that's a good point that you make here on potentially the game total.
Yeah.
And I know that you're targeting the game total in this one. Why don't you break down that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'm liking the over 48.5 in this one. I know it's a little high of a total, but I think it's not going to be too much of an issue to hit the over in this one. You already said it. The Rams defense, not very good right now. They're allowing the second most points per game and the most rushing yards per game. They've allowed 8 touchdown passes and only have 1 interception. So they're not really doing anything well on either in any facet of defense. They're bottom 10 in sacks and takeaways. In both games that Jordan Love has started this year, Green Bay has scored 29 points in both of them. So obviously, when he's in there, their offense performs quite well. He had 4 touchdown passes last week. He had 2 in week 1. So he has 6 touchdown passes through 2 games played so far. I don't have any concerns about their offense going into this one, even with a couple wide receiver injuries. I think their top 3 target guys, if you include Musgrave in there as well, are all going to be healthy and available for this one. So I think not going to have too many issues offensively. Green Bay's defense has been a little up and down so far. In the 2 games they played where they have not faced Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, their defense has allowed 34 and 31 points. That was 34 to the Eagles in week 1 and then 31 to Minnesota last week. I don't think the Rams are going to be able to put up quite that many points, but I think they will be able to do enough in this game. Their despite being as banged up as the Rams offense is, Stafford is just an unbelievable quarterback who can do crazy shit with the most random wide receivers you've ever heard of. Tutu Atwell is one of the better receivers on the game right now, all because Matthew Stafford is just so good. I think he's going to be able to lead them through to enough successful drives in this game where I think they're going to be able to score in the low 20s in this one, and then I think Green Bay should be able to hit the 30-plus mark points in this game. So I think should be over 50 points total in this game the way I'm seeing it. So definitely like the over.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have the schedule right in front of me right this second, so you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure their only win is that big win at home against the Niners, right? I mean, Niners were a little bit hampered, but like, I'm pretty
they
sure,
are 1-3,
right?
so that was their only game where they came back down 10 points.
Yeah.
To the Niners, and that's a good defense. That's a 49ers defense that is still very good. They scored 27 points on them, so I think this is still a very capable offense despite the injuries.
They feel good at home. At home. So I'm right there with you. I think over 48. I mean, 48 is a high number, but not that high.
I think it might be the highest total of the week. I don't know off the time, but I think it's one of those highest.
Well, I think Arizona 50.
Oh yeah, that was quite high. That one's pretty high. I couldn't take that one.
That's a huge one.
That's a big number.
Yeah. So that does us for the week. V. We do have some reads over in the Discord for the primetime games. I'm really liking some stuff on Monday.
I got something for Sunday as well.
There we go. So stay tapped in for that over in our Discord. For anybody who is not in our Discord, hit up importantnonsense.com. Become a member. That's how you get into our Discord. You can ask all the guys the questions. You can ask me and V any of your betting questions. We'd love to set you up, give you some of our picks. Jason's been throwing in some bangers in there too. We've had a lot of fun and a lot of good. There's been some weird stuff, and we're hoping to have a little bit of a turnaround in terms of the money we're taking home. But we're getting in there. And that about wraps us up for week 5. So back same time next week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here. Stay locked in. Hit up our YouTube, hit up our Twitch, hit up our, I think we have a Twitter. Hit us up. We're happy to help you out with your lineups, all that stuff. Yeah. I think that about does it. V, do you have any parting words for the folks at home?
I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful weekend of watching football and winning some bets. Should be a fun time. Yeah, we'll see everybody again next week.
Yep. Can't wait to do it again, partner. Until next time, everybody, good night and good luck.